Kearney is a friend of Father John's and has come to speak in some of his classes. And then Rabbi Matt Derenbacher has taught here before in the past, in 2018, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
2017 or 18.
And is related to some Bellarmine faculty. So that's that. And we're going to spend the first portion of this event asking them to talk about their experiences with their specific faith and cultural backgrounds, what they think about these topics. And then we're going to kind of transition, and Dr. Tudor is going to take over more, and we're going to have a proper Death Cafe where you can discuss these ideas with between each other, and we also have lots of cake. So, to begin, I would like to ask all of you to please introduce yourself and give a little bit about your background, worldview, and your relationship with faith or spiritual traditions, if any.
You would.
Sure.
They know
Thanks.
me.
All right, cool. Thanks. Hey, so my name is Matt Derenbacher. I am a fourth-year rabbinical student. So rabbinical school, to become a rabbi, it's 5 years after undergrad. So I'm in year 4 of 5, almost there. I have all my coursework done. I just need to finish my thesis, and I'm doing it on video games. So yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna stream it on Twitch. So it'll be the first ever rabbinic thesis that is live streamed, and I'll just not really hand them anything because it's a live stream. It'll be available everywhere. So yeah, I'm Jewish. It's interesting that you emailed me about this like last week because I got a call on Friday to do a funeral this morning. So yeah, I mean it's a fresh topic right now. So relationship to faith. I am a faith leader in the Jewish community. I am a rabbi for Ohio University's Hillel. So I drive to Athens a few times a month, and I'm a student congregational rabbi in Terre Haute, Indiana, which is where I did the funeral this morning. And I'm also a chaplain candidate for the U.S. Air Force. So I do a lot of interfaith work, especially with that. So did that cover everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm as old as the college is, exactly. The college was born in 1950 and so was I. So we are both 72 years old. So the past 72 years I've done all kinds of things in my life. And but since you want me to pigeonhole myself in what the faith and stuff. So I was born in India. I was raised in a Hindu household, and if you all know about anything about India, every single religious thought and tradition that exists on earth is represented in India. We have the first Jewish synagogue, the Apostle Thomas first stopped outside of Judea. He came to India and he preached there. And so we have Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, of course, and all the facets of Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism. And then Islam came, and then the merger of all these different religions and things of that nature. So that's my background from where I come from. And then the second part is what you practice. And obviously I was raised a Hindu, in a Hindu household, but surrounded with all these different thoughts. And then add to that, a liberal dose of questioning everything. I've come up with my own thoughts on, and the best of what I can grab from different places. And I really don't teach anything, but I do read a lot, and I'm extremely interested in the other intersection, when we talk about different faiths. But different faiths really represent how we as individuals live. And how we as individuals live is entirely in our biology and neuroscience, and how we function as organisms on Earth. And I think there is a big intersection and a big interplay there. So I study that kind of stuff.
So I'm Dr. Tudor. I know several of you pretty well, and I teach here. I'm in health and aging. Well, what are we now? Healthcare administration and public health. That's what I'm in. So I'm the end of life professor here. My faith tradition. I grew up Catholic, and went to Catholic school. Our Lady of the Assumption, Immaculate Heart of Mary, St. Pius X, Notre Dame Preparatory School for Girls. Yeah, so I did all of that, and I absolutely loved Catholicism until I started. I'm LGBTQ, and knew that fairly early on, as one does. Okay, and was an absolute. I came out during the AIDS crisis, which was not a great time to be gay, and so. And that was also something, I don't know if it's because I got old enough or the Catholic Church itself was changing at the time, but the Catholic Church became enormously political, and I was super, super turned off by that. I loved the Catholic Church when it was the Catholic Church, and I got to go to Mass and do the rituals and all of that, but I would do that in school, and then I would see the rhetoric and everything. The knife in the heart for me with Catholicism, I like talking about stuff like this on Catholic campuses. Just turn that off for a second. The knife in the heart for me was when I went to Rome, and I was on a study abroad trip-ish kind of thing, and I went to Rome, and my parents had really struggled financially to pay for Catholic school for me and my sister. And and there were people I was friends with a family named the Hennemans who had 10 or 11 children, and 2 of them were in my grade. A set of twins was in my grade, and they lived basically well below the poverty level because they were paying for all of their kids to go to Catholic school. And so that sense of give money to the church and go to Catholic school had been a big thing for me. So I went to Rome, and it had been really hard for all of us. And I went to Rome, and I was going up to the Duomo to see the city on a tour, and the whole wall, all of the walls were made of gold. And as I was walking up, and they were talking about how this entire inside of the staircase was, and it was, I can't. If you haven't been there, I mean, it's intended to inspire a certain kind of awe because of its size. And to see something that large that was literally made of gold, when my family had had to struggle so much. And between that and the political rhetoric, I just said, I can't do this anymore. And so I walked away from the Catholic Church. That said, it's still very much part of my belief systems in some ways. My beliefs in things like the afterlife, though, and concepts like that is much more driven by my work with dying people and what they say, because they know a lot about what happens after this. And so I have been forced over time to reconcile what I've been told about the afterlife and about what happens when you're dying with what they tell me they have experienced. And that has been amazing. It's been, nobody is a better teacher than a person who is dying. And so I've had sort of a profound, in the past 5 years, change in what I think about cosmology and things like the afterlife and things like that, just because of working with dying people. I'm an end-of-life doula, so I'm a death doula. So I work with dying people. I'm in the process right now of helping, you just said, of helping a friend of mine die. And that is just killing me. But it is. I've lost both my fathers, my mother, half my dissertation committee, 2 dogs, a cat, and now my best friend is dying of cancer. So, I get it, but like I said, this has helped me a lot, the study of this, and to understand that, and to be comforted by that. So, anyway, so that's my story. Sorry, that was long. And also, this mask is ugly, but I don't suck it all the way down my throat every time I talk. So it's a speaking mask. So that's my story. So what do I believe personally? I believe what they tell me. And I do love Catholicism still, I do. I love the Mass, I do. But I wish they'd hush about the politics.
Rabbi, do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say I love that you included your pets in that too.
My what?
Your pets.
Oh, of course, an
Yeah.
18 and a 19-year-old cat.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't think that changes your life?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, try living 18 years with a cat and losing him. You know,
Yeah.
you have to.
Yeah.
People who don't understand that animal deaths are real, I got no place for that because it messes up your whole life for a long time,
Yeah.
and it's very disenfranchised grief too, because
Yeah.
people make fun of it and they shouldn't. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's often the worst death that a child experiences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My wife does grief counseling for groups for pet loss.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, and people like can't function.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely putting Hobby and Beezy in there, Miss Beezy, the cat, and it was bad.
Yeah.
So it was in the middle of all the rest of it too. So, so there you go.
Thank you. So our next question is about beliefs on the afterlife. What do you, your tradition, or your community believes happens after death? And if you have a tradition, do you agree with their ideas on the topic of life after death?
Keep going.
Sure. Yeah. So for Judaism, that's a really complicated question. In Judaism, there's a tendency to not define the afterlife because we don't really know. Just like we don't try to define God, we don't try to define the afterlife because we don't understand it. We do have some, so in Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Bible, Torah, Nevi'im, which is the prophets, Ketuvim, which is the writings, there's definitely mention of Shemayim, which is heaven, and we do have this idea of Olam Haba, the world to come. What that looks like varies. I mean, so there's a spectrum of Judaism. There's everything from cultural humanist Judaism, and there are congregations. There's one in Cincinnati that is, they don't believe in God at all, but they come together for Shabbat services, and they spend time together in Jewish community. And then you have like the Haredi movement on the opposite end, which is very, very like ultra orthodox, I suppose, and everything in between. So I'm on the Reform conservative end, so religiously more liberal in practice and what our congregations do. So afterlife not really addressed. Judaism is very focused on the here and now. And at the end of every service, we do what is called the Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. And so we say the names of those who have died in this season and years past, and we remember loved ones, and we say this prayer. And it doesn't mention death at all. It's an Aramaic sort of psalm of praise. And it was instituted around the Crusade period because so many people were losing family members and just entire communities were being wiped out. And that's something also great to talk about on a Catholic campus. But yeah, so that they instituted this practice of remembering. And so there's, I would say the closest thing we have to like defining the afterlife is the idea that there is an Olam Haba, so there is something after this. Everyone is welcome to it. It's like the idea of heaven is an open door policy. You don't have to believe certain things. You don't have to do certain things. Yeah, it's everyone is welcome. What it looks like, don't know. Doesn't really matter because right now we're here, and the whole goal is to do the best we can with what we have while we're here. So on a personal level, this is probably going to sound really, I don't know, weird, but I don't really care what happens after. Yeah, I mean, my whole thing is like, we're here now, let's make the best of it. And views toward death in Judaism, like, so we have this idea of mitzvot, right, which are commandments or good deeds that's sort of interchangeable, and the most selfless, best deed that someone can do is to accompany the dead, because it's a favor that can never be returned, right? You accompany someone to their grave, and it's just you that walks away. So that's the highest level of mitzvah. But yeah, I know that's not like super helpful, that I'm not really worried about what comes after this. But it's not something that's really talked about a ton in Jewish life. Yeah, go for it.
Well, I need a whole semester.
Yeah.
But, so do you mind if I take this off? Or I remove this a little bit, just like it's hot when you speak.
This room's always really hot.
Let me start here. I'd like to preface whatever it is with one underlying principle in Hinduism, Buddhism, and all the other isms, which really are not any religion at all. They're all a manner of living life. And so the actual word for the Hindu-based religion or religious traditions is Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means never ending. It never started. It's continuing. It will never end. Been there forever. Sanatan Dharma. Like I said, it will be a whole semester before I can explain everything. But the one principle in these beliefs is that the entire 100% entire responsibility for one's life is with the individual. The individual is responsible for living, the consequences of living, and whatever we call the religious texts and all that kind of thing are just guidelines. In fact, in multiple places in all these texts, it said, don't take what is written for granted. Experience it yourself. Test it out yourself. If you don't prove it to yourself, it is not real. It is not true. I mean, this is written over and over and over again, and the Buddha in the Buddhist traditions actually said so. Don't even believe me. Just because I say so, it doesn't mean anything. If it is not your reality, your truth, it is not real, period. It's nothing to do with the text, nothing to do what other people say. So the responsibility is actually handed over to the individual to do whatever they want. The second, I'm trying to work my way through this. The second cardinal principle, which is articulated multiple places also, is the principle of karma. Have you heard of the karma? Okay. So the popular interpretation of the word karma is destiny. It's my karma. I got it. We don't get anything just like that. It's always a consequence or a build-up of what you've had in the past. So that is a clarification of the popular term karma. The other use of the word karma has been to designate action. Now, action could be, so action is actually physical action, and what goes behind that action is nobody here or nobody at all on earth can take any action, be it thought, word, or deed, unless there is a much deeper motivation inside. So when these religious traditions said the responsibility is yours, they also said it is also your responsibility to find out what is inside, which will then give you an inkling of what action you take. And so that is another definition of karma. The third definition of karma is, so if you understand what's inside of you when you're now acting, is the volition. What is the motivation which has caused you to think, convert that thought into words, or convert the thought and words into actual physical action. The volition. And the reason for the volition, I promise you it will lead to the afterlife also. The reason for the volition is, it is compared to planting a seed. The volition is the seed which will give you the fruit of karma. So the purity or the quality of the volition gives you the fruit of that volition. Very typical example is given that if you plant a mango seed, you will get a mango tree. If you plant a lemon, whatever it is, you will get a lemon tree. Most of us in our lives, we plant a lemon tree and want the sweetness of mangoes. Plant a lemon tree, want the sweetness of mangoes, and then you go through this whole thing. Why in the world am I not getting the sweetness of mangoes? What is this conspiracy theory behind it? What has the ground? You see what I'm saying? You blame any and everybody, but the seed that you planted gives you the result of what you want. So the responsibility that is given, you guys are much younger, so I can speak like I would speak to my children and grandchildren. The responsibility that is given to you has some logic. The logic is you are in charge of your fortune or your future, and your future is based on the seed that you plant. Be very careful with the seed that you plant. The fact that the seed that you plant will bear a fruit is the law of nature. Is the law of nature. And if you now move back into biology, the law of nature, we are all, every one of us and every living thing, is actually nothing more than the fertilization of an egg. And the replication and duplication and the DNA, etc., etc. And every time there is replication, the telomeres in our cells, they shorten and shorten and shorten. At some point in time, they're short enough that the cell cannot replicate itself, and that cell non-replication is what we call death. Biologically proven. I mean, in two sentences I said this, people have written reams about it, right? I mean, it will happen. There's no way of avoiding it. Just the same as that if you plant a lemon seed, you will get a lemon tree. Having said that, therefore, what, in terms of the afterlife, and I completely agree with Matt, nobody's come back to say what is the afterlife. And every religion worth its name talks about the afterlife. You've got to question why, right? And a lot of it is because it gives that particular religious tradition some veracity, some credibility. They were talking about the afterlife. If you don't do this, then you will get that. If you do this, then you will get that. Therefore, believe in me, believe in my text. By the way, this is the donation box. Right? I mean, that is typically what happens. The way that the Hindu and the Buddhist texts kind of explain the fundamental thing which you will have all come across, which is rebirth. So it's a very strong belief that there is a rebirth. And the rebirth, which I don't necessarily believe or not believe, I don't know which way it goes, but that there is a continuity is argued intellectually by saying that every moment that we have, you can measure it by the breath that you take. Every time you take a breath in and breath out, you're living. The moment that breath stops, you're dead. So, when that moment is going, that moment is moving on. And when it is moving on, this volition that we talked about is also something that we are planting. When we are planting, it has to bear fruit. And the volition comes out of the accumulation of all that we take in through our senses and all the brain processes and all the memory and so on and so forth. And finally, you know, we come out by saying, why did that lemon not give me mangoes, right? And then we get angry. But all of that is inside of me. It's like a volcano. It keeps, and it's building up, it's building up, it's building up. And what is argued is that at the moment of death, when there is a thought, the thought is again the result of the seed that is planted. And that thought, which really wants, that thought is really the motivation for us to live. Every moment that we live is we want to live because we want to fulfill something. We have to fulfill something that is inside of us. And it is just coming up, and that is what is life. And since, you know, biologically it stops because we stop breathing, just because it stops biologically doesn't mean that the flow stops. That is the argument. That is what is taught. The flow of our desires, the flow of what we want, is what is called consciousness. And that consciousness moves from one body to another body in order to fulfill its karma, or, you know, or burn out the karma that you have accumulated. That is the logic behind rebirth. Having said that, I have not met anybody who's come back. I have not met anybody who came back and said that this is what was left over from my last birth. I'm here because I have to work it out. I have not come across that. But there is logic. And the logic really, for me, points back to the fact that we have just this moment to live. We don't know anything about the next moment. We don't know if what is the fault around here? The San Madrid fault or something, right? We don't know if there's going to be an earthquake in the next 2 seconds. We have no idea.
Things are weird.
I'm just saying, you know, who knew about COVID? One little virus. We are 80-90% of everything that we are is nothing but bacteria and viruses and you know, all kinds of things, right? That's what we are. And one singular virus can bring everything, or the entire world down to its knees. But there's so much that we don't know. And so if that is the case, then I submit for your consideration that we only have this moment. And in this moment, our job is to Matt's point, live it, identify the seeds of what we want to plant, knowing fully well that if I'm able to really get into myself and say that this is the seed and this seed is going to yield that result, and then again with great deliberateness I plant that, that's on me. So the entire responsibility of what we need to do is on us. Long-winded.
It's good though. I don't know how to follow with that. This is going to sound pretty vapid. What do I think? Mostly, I think that they're, okay, well, let me tell you what dying people go through. Wait, let me back up first. There's 2 ways, I think, of looking at life. And I'm very heavily influenced in this by my teacher, whose name is Stephen Jenkinson, who I worked with at the Orphan Wisdom School in Canada. And this is one of the most profound images, and it's so obvious. That's the thing about it, and I think that's one of the ways you can tell it's profound, because it's obvious. Everybody now lives as though each person is their own little bubble of life, okay? And they think that that makes them feel better. Okay, so here we have 100 million people just sort of popping around the world in their own little bubbles of life. And people actually live as though, and you know this, once their little bubble of life pops, the world ends. Okay, they literally, they wouldn't put it that way. Okay, but that is the way they are. Okay, I'm dealing with that right now. My friend is very death denying. And there's this sense of like, not just that he is going to disappear, but he almost has he's having an existential crisis right now because he's done none of his own work about his death. He's having an existential crisis as though, and you can tell, it's not just that he's going to die, it's that everything's going to disappear. Okay, and we're trained in our narcissistic self-centered, and I'm not being judgmental, I'm describing us. Okay, we are extraordinarily self-centered. I mean, Freud did that with death, right? Every time somebody dies, it invokes your own death. And that's why, we had a student killed here several years ago in a car accident, and everybody was immediately beginning trying to shove it back. Was she drinking? Because if the answer is no, or if the answer is yes, you're safe, right? She wasn't drinking. She wasn't. Was she speeding? No. And you see every one of those, you can see the anxiety get more and more and more and more and more, because they're not able to shove it back, okay? And then it's just in the gate. And once it's in the gate, spoiler, it's always been in the gate, but once it's in the gate, psychologically for you, you get that existential panic also, right? Particularly if it's somebody your age like that, it's going to completely freak you out, right? And that's the same on 50-year-olds. I mean, my friend who's dying is 56, and all of the 50-year-olds are like, it's in the gate. Well, it's always been in the gate, dummy. And at 50, you need to know that it's in the gate. Because this is the point at which when you go to the doctor to have those routine tests, something's wrong all the time. It is. It's not serious necessarily, but it's going to be wrong all the time. They're going to find something all the time. Okay. So imagine this entire culture of little bubbles of life popping around and popping like bubbles. And the existential panic around each one of those. No. Life is this. And it has always been here. Always. It's a big circle. Sorry for my students who've had to hear this mess. It's a big circle. And people have been coming into that circle and going out of that circle since the beginning of time. Okay? And for some reason, I'm here at the same time as you. Right? You're my tribe. Because I'm here with you. I mean, what are the chances that I would even meet you in the elevator? What are the chances that we would even be sitting here? What are the chances I would have taught him 45 times? What are the chances that we would even know each other at this point? It's because for some reason we're all supposed to be here at the same time. In this thing called life. You see? And our job is not to take every bloody thing we can find from this while we're here and go, mine, and make my little bubble so that I can float around with my little people until I go, and then I'm taking life and everything with me, right? No, my job is to go in this and understand that somebody was in my place, and now I'm in their place, and I'm in somebody else's place. It's my job to leave this whole project of the human race better than when I left it, either on a micro or a macro level. My community, my school, my family, my friends, my niece and nephew. If I can raise these kids not to be death denying, I will have given them their whole life. Their whole life. Because they will live differently if they accept death as part of their life. From the beginning. That's pretty easy. Their mom's got cancer. But my job is to make sure that they know that from the beginning, because we are not raised that way. Anybody had any death education? Anybody? No, we can't talk about it in high school, because if we do, we're like tempting suicide. They won't let me talk about. I do a death education class at high school. If somebody allows me to do that, it is so limited what I can talk about. Okay. So this is my project. Okay. I'm about here. Here's the edge. Okay. The house not that great. Maybe I'm a little closer here. Okay. Here we go. I'm heading out soon. Somebody's in my place. I'm in somebody's place, and it's their job to come in. The great thing is I'm not going into some unknown future. I'm joining the rest of them. I'm going into the past. My family is the entirety of the human race. They went through, they came out. Think of a river going back to the ocean. I'm just joining what I was there already. I'm joining all the rest of them, wherever they went. Okay, I don't believe in a particular faith system's idea of heaven, because dying people from every culture who are dying experience the same thing. Every one of them. Asian cultures, they don't talk about it. If you can get them to talk about it, it's amazing. But they don't want to talk about it. But if you get it, it's every single culture says the same thing. So there's something in that sense of passing through. Now that gives me enormous comfort, because when I think that the world's going to end when my bubble pops, that's terrifying. But if I think I'm working on a project, and instead of get, attain, It's leave, legacy. What am I going to throw behind me as I'm on my way out? What am I going to throw behind me as I go? That's it. Okay. As far as the afterlife, I can tell you exactly what people say. You ready? Spoiler. Everybody ready? This is exactly what they say. Now, I started my life as a half English major, half biologist. I was double major, and I have struggled with those two things my whole life. Okay, the poet and the scientist, the poet and the scientist, and the science writing, right? And so this is how we've made sense, the two of us, how we've made peace with this. Okay, and I'm going to immediately go all medical materialism on you. So as I'm going to critique the dying as we go. Ready? When somebody dies, you know about NDEs, right? Near-death experiences. Okay, go to the light. Ooh, there's a light in a tunnel. That's a near-death experience. It's called an NDE. People who flatline on the table, they all see the same thing. Okay? They have a sense. They are pulled out of their body. They look down, and they look down on the body and go, wow. Look at that, it's me. And they do have that moment of weirdness of like, whoa, this is crazy. And then all of a sudden, they'll have a sense of being pulled very strongly back up a tunnel. And that's the sense of it, being sort of sucked away. That's what they'll say. Like, all of a sudden, I was just sucked away. They go up through this tunnel, giant light at the end of it. Okay? Now, okay, that's poet. Scientist says, and I know I heard it. Didn't you hear it? Somebody was like, well, that's clearly lack of oxygen, and it's causing, some sort of a visual hallucination. And okay, yeah, that's me too. I got that voice too. Here it comes. They will get to a point where they will come to a clearing of some kind, and it's culturally specific. So if it's a desert, it's a desert. If it's Kansas, it's Kansas. If it's Kentucky, it's bluegrass, whatever. And it's often a very familiar setting at first. And here, good news, the dogs and cats are there. Usually somebody's favorite animal, and it could be the animal not from now, but from their favorite animal of their whole life. So you'll have like an 80-year-old man will report once he's been resuscitated, and they say, what did you see? He'll not say that he saw the dog he has now. He'll say it was the dog that he had when he was 12 years old. Okay? Or the cat will be there, just sort of slinking around your leg. But not your cat now, it's the cat that is the cat. You know the cat. Everybody's had the cat and the dog. They see that. Then somebody who is familiar to them, who has died, will greet them. Sister, brother, really close relative, close friend will greet them. And they will feel themselves moving through this, whatever this landscape is. And they'll walk and walk and walk, and they'll see all kinds of other people. They'll see other people that they know. And then at some point, they hit a barrier. They can't see it, okay? But they literally stop. They have a sense of stopping. Everybody else moves on. They've hit this barrier, and they hear a voice. And it's usually what they stereotypically would think of God's voice. So if you think it's a man, my son, that's what they hear. Okay, they'll hear some sort of stereotypical voice, and that voice will say to them, because this is an NDE and not a death experience, the person will say to them, something akin to, your work's not done, it's not your time, you have other things to do, you need to go back, you can't cross through here yet, we'll be here later. There's all these weird sort of comforting, like, we'll be here later, okay, but this isn't your time. And right around the time they begin to hear that, they begin to be drawn back. Okay, and down and down and down and down they go. That part they talk about as being extraordinarily jarring, okay, because they were very comfortable where they were. But they hit that barrier, and then they come back, okay. That is consistent across all cultures. Okay, that sense of that. It's just the details are different. So, whatever's past there, no idea. Don't care. None of my business. No, seriously, it's none of my business. I'm not supposed to know that right now.
Right.
See, that's what I'm saying. I'm not supposed to know everything, despite what we think. Right? And picking at that, we just found out, I wish they'd quit picking at it a little bit. We just found out that they've been MRIing corpses because, you know, medicine needs to spend more. They've been MRIing corpses and recently dead people, like in trying to see, and they still have brain activity hours after they're dead of some kind. So there's some kind of consciousness going on there. Now in my field, it is general that you don't, after somebody's died, hearing goes last. Smell and hearing are the two that go last. And people can hear you about 10 minutes after they've died. Respiratory therapy was changing their protocols because of that. Because they're just like, okay, well, he's done, let's get all this stuff. Give him 10 minutes. Yeah, give it 10 minutes just so that person can hear you, you know, and act as though they can hear you. Keep the music up, keep everything. So that's what, that and nearing death awareness. You thought yours was long. Nearing death awareness, NDA, is what dying people see. And that is one of the most profound things, and my friend who is dying is just showing the first signs of NDA, which is very troubling because it's very predictive. Okay, you can predict when someone's going to die, believe it or not, usually within a couple of days, if you know what to look for. Right? All I'm telling you is stuff people used to know, everybody, every woman in the United States knew before 1850. And all I'm doing is teaching you what they knew. Okay? In Ireland, these people still do this. And the women who do this still are called seers, S-E-E-R-S, because they didn't understand it's just observational medicine, and they thought when they could predict when somebody was going to die, they thought they could see the future. So they still call them seers. And so that's what a doula is there, is a seer. Okay? Person who's dying will they begin to speak in metaphor. It's amazing. Humanities, anybody in the humanities? English, whatever. See, I told you, the poet thing. Yeah. We're so good at this. That's why I got to get some doulas. I got to pluck the English department. You got to get some doulas because they begin to speak completely metaphorically. So they'll talk about leaving. I got to catch a train. I got to go here. I got to catch a bus. Where's my passport? Images of leaving, because their body knows they're leaving, but it's never done it before. So it goes with what it knows. So people are like, she's lost her mind. And it's like, no, she hasn't at all. Her body knows she's going. And that's an image of going. Images of travel, they may tell you they're going to die. Both of my fathers told me they were going to die. And I knew. And they did within a week. And everybody else is like, stop, don't talk like that. No, they mean it. Okay, when a dying person says that, they mean it. They will see people who are not there. They'll see dead people who are not there. And that's really, really common. Okay. This is consistent across all of them. They'll do leave-taking activities. There's all of this stuff, you all. And it's so consistent, you know. And because it's everybody, that's what, when I say this is my tribe, that's just who we are. It's the way we deal with it. It's a controllable process. That piece of it. It does not have to be so anxiety-producing. You don't have to be afraid of it. And you don't have to be worried that you're just going to be with the rest of your people. You're not going to be, I do not believe in the judging God. I'm sorry, I've read the Bible. I know. Okay, my wife is her father's a Calvinist minister. I know all about the judging God. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. There are some dying people who suffer terribly while they're dying. They get tormented by people, and I think some of them get their hell before they die, frankly. Watching people who are very, very conflicted and who have had very difficult lives and very not so good lives. They get tormented horribly while they're dying. And that's the closest I come to eternal punishment. But once they die, everybody does the same. Everybody does that. It's amazing. That's why everybody's like, I don't want to talk about death. It's the more you talk about death, the better you feel about it. Yeah. The better you feel about it, because it's a manageable process and it's not scary. It doesn't have to be scary. Whole cultures are not afraid of death. We're terrified of it. For example, for reference, I give you everything going on right now. Everything going on right now is the death denial that we knew this culture was going to slam into in my field. It's been shinier and uglier than even we thought it would be, though. I mean, we did. We were like, one of these days, we're all gonna get a comeuppance, and we're really gonna see this death denial stuff hit the road. And everybody in the death field was like, oh my gosh, we're sending each other links, going, oh my, I mean, this. It's been when my research is good, everything's bad. And we are a bunch of gallows humor awful. So that's my long answer. She's like, we'll put aside 2 hours next time. Sorry, so that was long.
Yeah, okay. I think we're going to kind of wrap up with this last question. We had 4, but I am cutting the 4th question.
She's like, this group.
Just so we can get some
So
picks.
sorry. It's a big topic.
It is a big topic, and honestly, the majority of your answers so far have already really addressed this, but I think it'd be good to just like hit home with this question. How do you feel about death? And what in your belief system gives you comfort around the subject of death?
How do I feel about death? I don't know how to say it without it sounding weird. I mean, I think you'll appreciate it, but like, I feel good about it. Because death is another part of life. It shouldn't be this scary thing. A lot of the families I talk to, especially in the military setting, there's this fear that they're going to lose their loved one through death. And as we get talking more, they begin to realize that death isn't the end of the relationship with the deceased person. The relationship transforms. Like, you can still have a relationship with that person. Yeah, I mean, I feel good about death. In Judaism, going back to, you mentioned something about hell and like how like some people get that before, and I mean, that's Judaism, there is no hell. The closest thing we get is like a separation from God. For one of the rabbis in one of the texts is like, yep, it's 6 months. That's it right there. That's hell. 6 months away from God. But no, I think that the hell that the only real experience of hell is the hell that we create for ourselves and for each other. And unfortunately, because we don't talk about death, moments where people are dying, they're so conflicted because they've never faced, like, well, what do I believe? Like, what is my relationship to my God, to my people, to, like, what do I do with all of this? And then it hits them all at once, and that really sucks. And I hate that that is a part of the dying experience, because the transition from life to death, it should be a beautiful, holy experience. It really should be. Yeah, I feel good about it. That's it.
I don't know what I feel. I'm of course much closer to death than any one of you all, just because I'm older. I've seen both my parents pass. Did not have the good fortune of being with them when they passed. But you know, from what people told me, they passed very, very peacefully, wide awake, and then they, passed. And so, and I've seen others, you do hear these things, oh, that friend of yours or that cousin of yours just went for a walk in the park and came back and collapsed and died. You do hear these stories all the time. And so one thing, in one of the texts, which I'm not a, deeply religious, but one of our texts, which you may have heard of, because this is interfaith. Have you heard of the Bhagavad Gita? Mm-hmm. The Bhagavad Gita was part of the Mahabharata war. And in the Mahabharata war, there were 5 brothers fighting hundreds of their cousins at one time. Anyway, so of the 5 brothers, the oldest brother was also called Dharmaraj. So he is absolute, anything that he says is going to be the absolute truth. And just to test him, the god of death one time led them to a lake where they were really thirsty, and everyone drank water from that lake, and that water was poisoned. But because he was Dharmaraj, he didn't die. The other 4 brothers died. And so this god of death came up and said, I'm going to ask you 100 questions. And if you answer even one question untruthfully, because I want to prove that you are not Dharmaraj, right? So if you answer even one question untruthfully, your brothers are not going to come back to life. But if you answer all 100 truthfully, then they will come back to life. So one question after another one. One of the questions was so general. He says, what is the most wondrous thing that you have seen? What is the most wondrous thing that you have seen? That is such an open-ended question. Anybody could give all kinds of answers. But Dharmaraj says, the most wondrous thing I have seen is everywhere around us. People are dying. Everyone dies. We see that. But we all say, I will not die. That sense of immortality is something that is built in us. Therefore, it is almost impossible in my mind to say, I'm prepared to die. But at the same time, it's the easiest thing to say, I'm prepared to die. Because you know it's going to happen. That is the one thing that is guaranteed. If there is any certainty on earth, that is a guarantee. You're going to die. May as well accept it. The moment you're born, you're going to die. I hate to be, this way, but that is the truth. It is the truth. So, if that is the truth, if you're going to die, and you don't know when exactly you're going to die, and you have no idea what's going to happen after you die, you have no concept of, whether you're going to suffer or not suffer, or pardon me, whether you'll see visions or lights and this, that, you have no idea. The only thing that is in your hand is to say, this moment, I will do whatever I can in this moment. I have no control on what has passed. Okay, I was born. I did not choose. I don't know about you all, but I did not choose to be born in India to the parents that I have. I don't know about you all. Somebody may have chosen to be born in Louisville, Kentucky, or something of that nature. But most people I know have no choice in the matter. So why are we born in that particular place? So those parents go through those experiences and so on and so forth. Is it worth? It's a wonderful PhD subject if somebody wants, but is it practical for our discussion on how do you live life and how do you die? So the fact is, you are going to die. No avoiding it. There's not much preparation you can do for it. You can go to the gym, eat well, don't do drugs, don't do a lot of alcohol, this, that, and there. You can prolong, but there will come a time when this finishes. So the only thing that is in our hand is right here, right now, and to live life true to what we want to be, and to our benefit and to the benefit of others.
How I feel about death? Well, clearly I'm okay with it. I am getting a little tired of it, I gotta be honest, just because the pandemic has really beaten me down with it, to be honest. It's been a lot. But generally speaking, if you live your life in such a way, and this is, how our culture is selling you garbage. The myth of retirement. Don't live now, and I grew up with this, okay? Don't live now, don't buy, you gotta save money, you gotta do this, you gotta blah, 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 do it, and you'll live when you're 65. My stepdad did that, because I was the bill of gold, I was what he worked every day of his life. He owned his own business, he was successful by every measure, okay? He never took a vacation day, he never took a weekend off, he never did anything he wanted to do, because he was gonna do everything he wanted to do at 68 when he was promised that he could because of retirement. He died of cancer at 68. So he never, ever, ever, ever lived his life. That is the myth of retirement. This bucket list crap, really annoys me. Okay? Because the bucket list implies that you're going to be around later, one, and two, physically able to do whatever that amazing thing that you've planned your whole life that you want to do. Don't make a bucket list, make a plan. Get it done. I don't have anything else to do. Okay, you guys know me. I'm looking for stuff to do. And now it's the polar bear. I still want to see a polar bear. Not the one that I want to go to Alaska and I want to see a polar bear. Okay, because they're not going to be there anymore. And
Yeah.
so am I sitting here going, when I retire, I'm going to go up to Alaska? No. Okay, because for one thing, I have lupus and a brain tumor. Every time I go to the doctor, they find something they want to cut off of somewhere, right? Something needs a scan, something my luck's going to run out. Okay, I'm 53. I'll be lucky to make it 65 with the brain tumor treatment I had. So that's what time is it? Okay, I don't have a lot of time left. And I know that. And they told me that. And you know what? That's okay. Because, oh boy, have I run this one out, y'all. I have had such a time. Ooh, I've had such a time. Even the parts that were really, really crappy. And if I die tomorrow, if they tell me tomorrow that I have a terminal illness, I'm fine. And the reason why people are not fine when somebody tells them that is because they didn't live. Because they bought this bill of garbage that we're getting sold right now. And we have been getting sold for most of the 20th century. You want to know why the boomers are so PO'd all the time? Because they bought that bill of goods. And they didn't get what was at the end of it. They didn't get it. And they're not going to get it. They're living longer and their health is horrible and they're crippled and it's awful. That's why they're mad. Okay? And they're going to die not getting what they were promised. Nobody promised you anything. You have now. Right? You have now. You want to go to Paris? Go to Paris. And then you're like, well, wait, I wanted to go to Paris, but now I went to Paris. Great! You know what else is there? There are 9,000 other places to go. Get interested in that and then go there. Nobody's afraid to die when they've lived. The problem is people don't live. You got to figure out what that thing is. You know, that great City Slickers movie. What's the secret to life? One thing. And Billy Crystal goes, what is the one thing? He's like, that's what you got to decide. This is my one thing. I don't know how'd you get into this field? What's up with you and death? I don't know. He found me. You know? And no, you don't have to feel bad about it. Now, that's not saying be cavalier with it. Don't play with your life. And suicide is always an absolute friggin' tragedy because you rob us of you. I don't care about you. You rob us of that thing. You know? And that's why you're here. Why would you ruin it? Are we done? Sorry.
Yeah, so thank you. That was all good. Great. We're going to split into groups now after we have some cake, and I'm going to hand over the reins to Dr. Tudor and Lily Miller of the
Lily's a pro.
of the soon-to-be official RSO, St. Joseph of Arimathea Society. So they can tell you a little bit about that because it's really cool. But,
Okay.
yeah.
So, we're going to do a Death Cafe. Has anybody done one before? Ah, they're great fun. It's really easy. There's no pressure. We eat. Because you got to have cake. Cake and death always go together. Okay? They do. Because this is a hard